people like attention. It's always nice to get attention, to get, people giving you compliments, saying nice things about you. You hear compliments, you think, okay, I want to maybe think of doing more of whatever got me those compliments. And yeah, the British government and the people in it are no different. Keir Starmer really enjoyed that love letter he got from Hamas a few weeks ago. So he thought, why not show our love a bit more in a statement that I will read now. Let's read the statement, or at least the beginning of it, and we'll discuss. This is a press release by the British government. UK sanctions Israeli government ministers Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich in response to their repeated incitements of violence against Palestinian communities alongside Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and Norway. Yeah, a who's who of the countries that are proudly responding to October 7th with support for the perpetrators and it seems for their cause of exterminating the Jews. I don't know how else to put it. In Norway's case, it's particularly interesting that this statement comes out today. Norway's case is generally interesting. This was a country that was very happy to be a part of Hitler's war, and they're very happy to be a part of the current iteration of wanting to achieve one of Hitler's main goals. So they today hosted in the Oslo Forum the Iranian foreign minister. So yeah, while Norway, Britain, and others are putting sanctions on Israeli ministers for saying mean things about the people who did October 7th, the people who have funded October 7th, as well as multiple attacks on Israel, and have stated that their goal is to wipe Israel off the map and America as well at some point. Those are the people celebrated by European countries, in which, by the way, if the Prime Minister of Israel were to land, he would get arrested by Norway. Welcome to the Daily Objective. I'm Razi Ginzberg. I'm joined by James Valliant. James, I don't know if you were unhappy with some of my historical accusations against Norway there, but I think it's it's definitely on point for how they are today.
Well, they're worse than Goslings, aren't they? Um, in one way they are. They're more direct in like you say, the standard of dealing with Iran, talking with Iran, versus the standard of talking with the foreign minister of Israel is quite astonishing, isn't it? It means to just hit you right in the face. This is moral posturing, totally fact-free, no worse than fact-free, based on a pile of lies that we have covered again and again and again on this channel. Nothing that comes out of Hamas is the truth. Nothing. And yet, all of those lies are the alleged factual predicate for all of this. We've talked about international law and how they have to change the definitions of genocide, even just to get these accusations off the ground. So it doesn't matter what the facts are, it doesn't matter what the principles are. They will alter the principle, they will bend the principles, they will accept what are demonstrable lies to be the truth. They won't look at the actual facts on the ground. If anything Israel has done, I mean, it's moral posturing about, war in general. And see, aren't we the wonderful pacifists and aren't we the wonderful people who oppose war as such? And they've got this kind of feeling back there, which is just a feeling, right? But if you really look at the history of warfare, Israel has done the most delicate war that in any time in history that I've ever heard of, where you feed the enemy, where you warn people to get out of buildings before that you bomb them. No. And in fact, if anything, it's that restraint, I'll put that in quotes, on Israel's part that will perpetuate the violence. What these Western nations are doing is quite worse. What they're doing is insisting that you have a policy much worse that would support and fund and keep alive the worst elements in Gaza, in the West Bank. And that's what they want. They do, get you mentioning World War II, though, is very interesting here because Europe should be ashamed of itself, absolutely ashamed of itself, how they betrayed the Jewish people so horrifically. No, they didn't pull off the Holocaust, it was Germany. But on the other hand, for so much of the 1930s, They helped, they appeased, they laid the groundwork, they made it possible. And then even when they knew it was a problem, Britain refused to accept Jewish refugees. Um, During that period of time. I mean, it's my country did too. I mean, it's absolutely despicable the way Jewish people have been treated by these nations. They haven't come to terms with that. They're accepting a narrative that whitewashes them. It's interesting that you bring it up, that whitewashes them and their policy going back 80, 90 years. It really is. I cannot disconnect the two. So when you bring that up, as a historian, I have to say, yeah, you guys still have not learned the lesson. You guys still have an undertow of despicable anti-Semitism to you. It's moral posturing based on lies. It's twisting principles, their what goes for their principles, and I put that in quote, twisting them no matter how twisting they have to do, what kind of twisting they have to do of their so-called principles to make Israel the bad guy. It's utterly despicable. Israel should respond in kind. America should respond in kind, frankly.
Yeah,
Say America didn't join in with this nonsense. And amazingly, what are supposed to be America's, some of America's closest allies have really set a wedge between us. But then to sanction Iran the way they do. Iran has been funding Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis. Look at the way Iran treats their own people compared to
yeah.
Israel. It's despicable.
Yeah, we're going to talk about some of the American response, not response, but some of that. But we're going to also talk. Actually, let me bring up now the fact that Israel's foreign minister refused a phone call from Britain's foreign minister today. Okay, I mean, come on, that's sort of why don't you answer the phone and tell him who he is and what he's doing, and call him out on being the piece of shit that he is. Look, let's read some of this and then continue with the story. It says UK sanctions Israeli government ministers Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich today in response to their repeated incitements of violence against Palestinian communities. Um, Alongside partners Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and Norway, the UK calls for immediate action against extremist settlers. Measures announced today demonstrate UK commitment to challenging those inciting hatred and violence. As Palestinian communities in the West Bank continue to suffer from severe acts of violence by extremist Israeli settlers, which also undermine a future Palestinian state, the United Kingdom has joined Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and Norway in stepping up the international response. Okay, let's pause here. There are first of all, there's so many weasel words in there, but there are lies. So acts of
A
violence,
non-extremist war.
extremist is
Non-extremist violence. You know, no, actually, it's the opposite. If you're going to grade violence, if you're going to grade war, Israel is doing the most delicate war you can possibly imagine in all of human history. And so,
and that's what it should be condemned, by the way. That's what
exactly,
Israel should be condemned
exactly,
about.
exactly. But to put it that way, well, a non-extremist act of violence. I mean, it's like in my country, they're having mostly peaceful what's a mostly peaceful protest? I mean, there's
Yeah.
some violence, is
By the
what you're
way,
saying.
I highly recommend watching yesterday's episode of the Daily Objective, where we talked about this settler violence, which turns out to be true in about 2% of the cases that the UN reports it to be true. But again, so some of the things in this paragraph, I don't even know if we're going to go beyond this paragraph. This paragraph alone is astonishing in so many ways. Acts of violence by extremist Israeli settlers, which also undermine a future Palestinian state. Well, good. I mean, a future Palestinian state is not a worthwhile cause. It is a state for the people who did October 7th, and to suggest such a state at any point was wrong. But to suggest that post October 7th is to say people who slaughter Jews need to be rewarded in the most, in the best way we can possibly imagine. That is what a Palestinian state is right now. That is why Macron is planning this summit to reward the Palestinians for October 7th with a state to get other people to acknowledge it. By the way, I don't know what exactly they're acknowledging. Who are they acknowledging? Is it Hamas? Is it Fatah, the leader of whom the president of Palestine, Mahmoud Abbas, said a few days ago how great October 7th was and how it brought the Palestinian cause to the forefront. And yes, of course it did. It did. It did bring it to it brought countries around the world together, united in their desire to reward the murderers of Jews with a state from which they can murder Jews more easily and be more motivated to do so because when you kill Jews, this is what you get.
We have been living de facto for the better part of the last 20 years with a de facto Palestinian state in Gaza. Israel unilaterally left Gaza, gave it to the Palestinians, forcibly relocated the population there that was actually doing anything to constructive, and forced them out of Gaza. This is what we've been living with. October 7th represents the reality of a Palestinian state in action. You could say, well, look, the charter of Hamas, we've talked about this a zillion times, the charter of Hamas cannot be clearer. They have explicit genocidal intention. We know what the Palestinian people and culture are all about. A Palestinian state means a state with a gun aimed at Israel's head, worse than a gun, the atrocities of October 7th. When you have a Palestinian state, what you get is October 7th, because we had for many years before October 7th, 2023, a de facto Palestinian state. And within 2 weeks, 3 weeks, something like, I'm not exaggerating, literally something like that, when Hamas took power, they had their first elections, Hamas takes power, and within days, in effect, they're lobbing rockets at Israel. That is what you get with a Palestinian state. So it is not only fact free, it's fact upside down. It's ignoring reality. It's total evasion of what the reality of a Palestinian state. Similarly, with the reports that they accept that BBC promotes on their channel, the lies of Hamas. So it's like denial Holocaust in terms of its aggressive fact evasion. They are looking at this upside down, and it's the moral compass they bring to it in the first place, which is entirely twisted and perverted. You're not going to make friends with these people. If you show any kindness to them and reward them for October 7th with yet another Palestinian state offer, this is what they wanted. You're saying it pays to do October 7th when they should look at it just in reverse. It did not happen in a vacuum, as UN General Secretary Guterres said. No, they had control of that place for years. And all they did was aggressive action against Israel whenever they could, from the moment practically Hamas took power, almost 20 years ago now. That's what a Palestinian state looks like.
Thank you, PC, for the super chat. PC says, Razi, I sanction Norway. Norway is an interesting case. Many of these countries make me wonder, about a lot of things, about NATO, and does it make sense in its current format? I mean, Turkey's a member of NATO. If Western countries, if free countries want to defend themselves, and that is a worthwhile goal, by the way. I'm against the existence of the United Nations. I'm very much in favor of some sort of military alliance, pact, whatever you want to call it, between free countries. But they have to actually want to stay free countries. And I don't know that Norway. So Norway is remember, it was like a week or 10 days before October 7th that the Norwegian foreign minister issued a statement saying they no longer support a two-state solution. They think there should be one state where everybody is a citizen and so on. And 10 days later, we saw that even though that doesn't yet exist, we got a sneak preview of the Palestinians saying, look, we're going to tear down fences, risk our lives, sacrifice ourselves in order to kill Jews when it's very difficult to do. What do you think we're going to do when it's easy and it's one state? So Norway has wanted the extermination of the Jews as an official policy, not stated in those words because that's honest people state things in the words that mean what they're trying to say.
And our
Um,
concepts actually reflect the facts of reality, you mean? Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, this has been Norway all along. So Norway, is we always talk about who's the worst right now in Europe? Is it Norway? Is it Spain? Is it Ireland? Britain is trying to throw its name in the hat, as is France. I think Norway seems pretty consistently, openly. Norway and Israel were drawn in the same group in the qualifiers for the 2026 World Cup. And I remember after the draw, the head of the Norwegian Football Association issued some statement, not in these words, but something to the effect of, "Look, I understand why people would want to beat up the Jews if they come here to watch the football match, but don't do that. It's not a good idea." He didn't say Jews, but he said, "Yeah, I get it, but let's not."
He understands why someone would want to beat up an Israel fan. Just restrain yourselves. That is a confession. That's such a psychological confession right there. Israel has a right to defend itself, except whenever it tries to do anything to defend itself, even with a pea shooter. I mean, that's just despicable. It's disgusting. And the way they sanction other governments, positively sanction other governments, compared to the way they negatively sanction the Israeli government, it makes it really crystal clear. We should have a defensive organization between civilized nations. Why? Only to the extent that they recognize the bad guys in this world, only to the extent they can recognize what an aggressive dictatorship looks like, and that it is aggressive dictatorship that we oppose. Otherwise, it lacks all moral credibility and turns into something like the UN, which frankly is just a terrorism and dictatorship protection racket, and has been for many decades. It does nothing to create world peace. And so you want to turn NATO into that? But then again, my president, the so-called military leader of this NATO alliance, is happy to deal with the Ayatollah, respects the leaders of Russia and China and North Korea. And so they get the world completely upside down. And so what the hell is NATO all about? Is NATO all about protecting free countries' freedom, rights, respecting countries' rights? No, it's about positively sanctioning the worst actors in the world and negatively sanctioning the island of civilization surrounded by the worst, most savage culture in the world. That's what it's about.
Yeah. Thank you, PC, for another super chat. PC says, James, California has a leftist government. Sadly, that is true. That is not a reason to arrest him, but it is true.
Yeah, I wouldn't go around threatening to arrest governors, Mr. Trump. But yeah, our one-party rule that's been so long, the last 2 or 3 decades in California has made it into a hellhole. Absolutely, no question about it. But and if California had a foreign policy, if California were a separate nation, I am absolutely certain they would be signing and right on. Gavin Newsom would be there signing off along with New Zealand, Canada, Norway, and Great Britain. Absolutely.
Yeah, California was kind of a nation, in the sense that, or at least in the foreign policy sense, until January 20th. I don't know what to call what's going on right now, but didn't the U.S. didn't sanction, I think, the ministers, or did they? But they had some choice words for they were very interested in internal Israeli politics and not so much in the politics of the
Well, no, it's
savages
wrong
and
when
who's
foreign nations interfere with our election. But Mr. Obama, for example, a president of the United States could come out clearly and try to influence and actually influence elections in Israel. Absolutely despicable. No, it's
not.
Netanyahu who's the bad guy, not the Ayatollah. Now think about that. Think about that. That's repeatedly what especially the political left. Now you got anti-Semites on the right, absolutely in America. You got Candace Owen and Tucker Carlson and Fuentes and all these other creeps on the right. But if the left took power in my country, absolutely, they would be much more critical of Netanyahu than they would be of the Ayatollah. And yeah, Trump is little better. I mean, what can I say? That's the hell that so-called civilizations are imposing on Israel, which is fighting for its life, ladies and gentlemen. It's absolutely disgusting.
I'm not 100% sure. I already said this, so I'll say it maybe again. Thank you, Bonnie, for the super chat. Yeah, you know who has a much better policy towards Israel than President Trump? The ambassador, former governor, the ambassador to Israel, Trump's ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee. So, such a good approach to Israel that the BBC did an article about it, which we don't have time to read the whole thing, but I'm going to read you a little bit of it because, sometimes we like to end on a positive note. Um, so the article starts, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, this is from yesterday, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, has suggested, quote, Muslim countries should give up some of their land to create a future Palestinian state. In an interview with the BBC, Huckabee said, quote, Muslim countries have 644 times the amount of land that are controlled by Israel. I love how somebody actually went and did the math. So maybe if there is such a desire for the Palestinian state, there would be someone who would say, we'd like to host it, he said. The ambassador also strongly criticized U.S. allies, including the UK and Australia, for sanctioning two far-right Israeli ministers over, quote, repeated incitements of violence against Palestinian communities in the occupied West Bank. In his interview, the ambassador called a two-state solution a proposed formula for peace between Israel and the Palestinians that has generally received international backing, including from multiple U.S. administrations, quote, an aspirational goal. Now the BBC adds their own, they have to add the facts so that we know what exactly is going on. So the next paragraph is adding the facts. The two-state solution envisages an independent Palestinian state in the occupied West Bank and in Gaza, with East Jerusalem as its capital. It would exist alongside Israel. Okay, so first of all, this has always been a pipe dream, but not a pipe dream of anybody except some politicians and diplomats. It's not something that people who support Israel would ever accept because they want supporting Israel means you want it to continue to exist, and this would be the end of it. It's not anything that the pro-Palestine you don't see. You will see maps if you go to any anti-Israel, pro-Palestine, whatever they want to call themselves, protest, you will see a map. There's one map you will see, and that is the map of all of Israel, including, the West Bank, including the Gaza Strip. I'm not sure if they always include the Golan Heights or not. I think they probably don't, but it's a map of all of Israel. And that's not a map. It's supposedly a map of what they want the future Palestinian state to be, but it is really a map of where they want to get rid of the Jews from, supposedly just there. We know better. So yeah, and by the way, when there were negotiations about a Palestinian state between Israel and Fatah, the Palestinian Authority, there was no scenario in which Israel completely leaves all of the West Bank. There were some scenarios where there would be land exchange. So everything the BBC says is a lie, even to the point of this is not what had been negotiated when there were negotiations. Now the idea that there would also be a single state for Gaza and the West Bank is of course also something that has been tried in effect when the Palestinians had elections. There was a result to the election, and then there was what inevitably followed a result of the election, which is war between the two sides, between the Palestinians, not reported anywhere near as widely as this war because Jews were not involved. But
Right.
yeah, war.
Palestinians can be at each other's throats. That's no problem. In fact, that's the inevitable state of affairs. Denying any volitional agency on the part of Palestinians. This is just the way they are. They never read the Hamas charter and take it literally. They never read the intentions of Palestinians and take them literally. But they will stand on their head and twist into pretzels to explain how Israel are the bad guys when they are the rights respecting nation in the world. It is perverse, it is disgusting. And no, we cannot. We've reached a point where it should be obvious. Palestinians have repeatedly, in my lifetime, rejected the very idea of having peace with Israel. UNRWA, I mean, we've discussed this several times already. UNRWA was teaching Palestinian kids it's a noble thing to martyr yourself in the cause of killing Jews. Go die so you can kill Jews, because that's really what we're all about. That's what it's all about in terms of keeping so-called Palestinians in that area so they can forever give grief to Israel. until you change the culture, until you change their minds, their psychology. And you're not going to, and we've been doing the opposite. Through UNRWA, we've been feeding the beast, this beast of mystic, collectivist, bigoted hatred of the Jews, this murderous hatred of the Jews, educating Palestinian kids in the cause of that very cause at Western taxpayer expense, mind you. And so, no, they would have to admit, they'd have to, the leaders of these countries would have to look in the mirror and say, we have got this so morally upside down. We have been so completely wrong. We've got it absolutely inverted, but the odds of that are pretty slim. They're all about moral posturing about Israel defending itself. And that's the wrong thing. As if Israel's attempt to live in some kind of security is itself the problem. They may not be explicitly taking the Hamas charter, but in effect, they are, in fact, on the side of the perpetrators of October 7th. And that's how we have to look at it. All of these countries should be ashamed of themselves. They've got it morally backwards. They've got the facts upside down. They'll twist their principles into any previous recognition of what those so-called principles were so that they can be anti-Israel. They've shown their colors. I mean,
Yeah.
like you said, BBC will double down on lies about Israel. And so that's the mentality we're talking about here.
Yeah. Thank you, PC, for another super chat. PC says UK is on the path to become an Islamic majority uh, um, country in a few decades. Um, I don't know. That's a possibility. There are many other possibilities. They're all bad. That's the thing. There's no really good. I mean, what's the alternative to that? I mean, there is again the people who are sounding the alarm on this, so to speak, are bad people mostly. They're fascists. They're people you don't want. You want them maybe fighting the Islamists on some island far away. You don't want them the ones in control. So yeah, it's
I do not want to sanction the Christian nationalists, whoever else that there are in Europe or America, who would be the ones on that side. That's the unfortunate thing, and it's the unfortunate thing within Israeli politics too. The closest things to right, foreign policy are also the people who are the most intensely religious and ultra conservative within Israel. This is the terrible false alternative, and it's a terrible false alternative that exists just as much in my country as in Israel.
yeah.
It's wrong. Mike Huckabee, for example, we just quoted the Israeli ambassador from the United States. He is a religious conservative. I'm
The
not.
American ambassador to Israel.
Oh, yeah, sorry. The American ambassador to Israel. I'm not putting him in the same camp as, say, Candace Owens, but look, he's got his own religious reasons for defending Israel, even though he's dead right about this point. If the Arab world really wants a Palestinian state, then put your money where your mouth is, because this continuous violence against Israel is intolerable. And until you recognize that, Israel needs security, and that means Palestinians can't really live next to Israel. They've proven they can't do that unless they're really, really willing to take on the ideological challenge. But they can't, you see, because they themselves are Islamists who believe in, to varying degrees, in the destruction of Israel and the supremacy. But Western civilization, ladies and gentlemen, is at risk. You can see it from these European nations. You can see it in the politics of all Western nations, frankly. The West is committing suicide. Civilization is self-destructing.
Yeah.
And this is a
It's
classic example when you hear them criticizing Israel, but reaching out a welcoming hand to Iran. What is that but the self-destruction of Western civilization?
Absolutely. Vered says not everyone sounding the alarm is bad. I agree.
Well, there's
Yeah,
us.
but everyone sounding the alarm who looks like they might have a chance of, winning elections anytime soon are bad. But yes, we very much are sounding the alarm, and we don't put ourselves in that category. And we're doing it on the Ayn Rand Center UK YouTube channel, but we're doing it, of course, with a worldwide audience, and we're not just limiting ourselves to the UK. July 1st, we are doing it live in Boston on stage. The Daily Objective, the reality show. Make sure you sign up. Link in the description and in the chat. Um, and yeah, that's going to be a great event. There's going to be a lot more than just the two shows. Just the two shows are going to be live streamed to our YouTube audience. But if you're there, there's yeah, it's a 3 hour event. So definitely make sure you join us there. James, I know you can't join us there, but you can join us for something else, which we will be announcing very, very soon. Next week is very, very soon, just to not be one
Well,
of those people who say very soon and you never know what that means.
if you're in
Um,
Boston and you don't go check it out, you are not really. I mean, you may be ignorant, but you're not really being selfish. So do yourself a favor, and if you're in Boston, check it out.
and if you're in front of a device right now, do yourself a favor and check out the reality show, which where we will be talking about Israel's terrible response to the one boat flotilla. Thanks, James. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Be safe.